So like a thumbtack had gotten caught in our drain pipe in the freezer, and like I couldn't get to it. It was just like in the middle, and I tried different, poking it with different things, different snakes, and couldn't get there. So that's where the baking soda and the vinegar come in. All right, let's talk about the New Deal now. So in 1932, there's a presidential election that pits the incumbent Herbert Hoover, who had won easily in 1928, dramatically in 1928, like just so overwhelmingly won, against the Democratic candidate Franklin Roosevelt, who comes from super wealth, who comes from New York. People didn't know it at the time, but was largely unable to walk because of polio, and we're going to see him win the presidency and initiate this thing called the New Deal. And the New Deal is basically going to be, hey, we're going to redo the relationship between the government and the economy, the government and society. And the federal government is going to take on a lot of authority over states and over business and over people's everyday lives. So first, let's talk about Franklin Roosevelt. Because in part, it's a little odd that in many ways, the most aristocratic backgrounds of American presidents will lead the charge to help everyday Americans far more than any president before. So here is the electoral map from 1932, and the blue are the Democrats, okay, and the red are the Republicans. So Franklin Roosevelt at this point is a Democrat. He's saying, hey, we're gonna change things. We're not just going to do nothing against the Great Depression. Herbert Hoover, who had won just about everything 4 years earlier, now wins just about nothing except for a couple states in the Northeast. But when Franklin Roosevelt becomes president, you can see from this political cartoon, there's lots of problems. There's unemployment. Let's see, what else? Let's see if I can get my little laser pointer going here. Oh, look at me. There's unemployment. There's debts from World War I. The farmers are in trouble. Taxes are too high. Prohibition, people can't drink alcohol. So it's like, wow, the economy sucks and I can't go home and, drink some beer or drink some wine, and the economy is bad. So here comes Roosevelt into the White House. Okay, so it's going to be three-pronged. It's going to be relief, recovery, and reform. So relief is just going to be getting people out of just out of the stress. So the Emergency Banking Relief Act, for instance, it doesn't change how banking works. What it does is it's basically a bank holiday. Say, we're going to close the banks, calm everybody down, and Roosevelt goes on the radio and explains how banks work and explains how taking your money out is going to hurt the economy. And he does this in these radio broadcasts, which become known as fireside chats, basically that you're listening to the president by your fireside. And it's an example of the federal government's role in everyday life, that the federal government, where the president is speaking to you in your home through the radio. He's explaining to you kind of some basic economic things that you may not know, but he's explaining basically basic banking, how banks work at the time, while then calling for a bank holiday. He starts... Franklin Roosevelt initiates a whole bunch of new government agencies, new administrations, and one of them is called the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, and it's led by this guy named Harry Hopkins. And this relief is going to be just jobs, The government's just going to create organizations to give people jobs. So the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, they're just going to say, hey, we're going to hire you to go rake leaves. We're going to hire you to go chop down some trees. We're going to hire you to help out with this forest. Just get you a job, not high paying, but basically get you in a place, get you working for some amount of money. Or the Public Works Administration. So we're going to get people to go, do things publicly, whether that's, build benches at SDSU, which is what happened, or paint murals. There's the Civil Works Administration. So, let's go fix a bridge. So not get paid much, but have a job and just kind of go make things a little better. He's also going to end prohibition. Congress is the 21st Amendment is going to repeal prohibition. So it's like, okay, you need a little relief, you can go drink some, calm your nerves. Interestingly enough, it's during the Great Depression that we see the forming of Alcoholics Anonymous, where a bunch of unemployed drunks largely come together to try to figure out how to self-help their way to abstinence and through sobriety. So that's relief. Then there's recovery. Okay, so we're going to relieve the situation, get people not hemorrhaging so much. Now we're going to try to recover the economy a little bit. And the person who's going to be in charge of the recovery administration is going to be Frances Perkins. There she is, photograph of her on the right. She becomes the Secretary of Labor, and she's the first female cabinet member. So this is part of the Democratic Party trying to get people who largely hadn't had political power before. They're going to appeal to African Americans. They're going to appeal to women, try to appeal to them to say, hey, we're going to bring you into the power structure. And so the National Industrial Recovery Act tries to encourage businesses and tries to give businesses aid to developing, to coming back and growing their business. One part of this is called the Blue Eagle. Okay, the Blue Eagle, there's a kind of sticker for it there on the left, part of the National Recovery Administration. It's to basically buy things produced by these companies. So if a company says, yes, we're gonna pay our workers this amount, we're going to employ this many people, you get this sticker. Your business can then put this sticker out, and the government says to Americans, like, hey, if you want businesses that are going to pay higher wages and businesses that are going to give better jobs, then you need to buy from this company because they're following NRA rules. Because these rules were guidelines, they weren't mandates. They weren't mandates for how much you had to pay an employee, but they were like, hey, it would help the economy if you paid employees more, it would help the economy if you employed more people, and so then you can get this sticker, and then people are saying, hey, oh yeah, I want to go buy there. It's kind of, it's a little bit like, you have a friend who works at a place and you want to support it because it's your friend, so you go, eat there even if it might cost a little more or something like that. So this is recovery. And then there's reform. Reform is literally changing how the relationship between the government and the economy. And so the government is going to put its hand into different sectors of the economy. So the Agricultural Adjustment Act and the Emergency Farm Mortgage Act, the government comes in and says, hey, we're going to pay some farmers not to farm. We're going to reduce mortgages or just get rid of them. We're going to set prices for certain agricultural products so that farmers aren't just not making any money. The Tennessee Valley Authority, the federal government is going to fund the making of dams in the Tennessee Valley along the Tennessee River to bring power to an impoverished area, so to bring electricity there. So that's more jobs. So the government is going to involve itself, the federal government is going to involve itself in local development. The Federal Securities Act is going to regulate the stock market. It's going to put rules and regulations into the stock market, things like laws against insider trading. That's where you're sharing information that other people aren't privy to, how much you can borrow versus how much you can't. And then finally, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, which your bank hopefully is today, where the federal government says, we will insure a certain amount of money for all people who put their money in banks. So if that bank goes out of business, you are insured. The federal government will give you your $2,000, your $5,000, even if that bank goes out of business. So think about it. The federal government has become an insurance company, basically. They've become a massive insurance company for banks to try to bring stability to banks and stability to people where, yes, I can put my money in the bank. Because you want people putting their money in banks, which then can invest, collect that capital, invest it, and put it to work. And so all of this, whether it's the fireside chats, whether it's the new administrations, whether it's the new organizations putting people to work, whether it's reforms that change how the government relates to the agricultural sector or the banking sector or to physical development, the federal government is now taking an active agent role in what's happening. And that's different than before, where the federal government tried to either stay out of things or tried just to be a broker between businesses. Now the federal government has become a player, a major player in all of these arenas. Now, none of this ends the Great Depression. In many ways, the Great Depression continues to get worse and worse, but it does give people hope. It does give people the belief that someone's out there working for them, looking to help them. This is the era in comic books when Superman is devised, where there's somebody out there who wants to help you, even in your worst time. The thing that's going to end the Great Depression and bring the United States kind of to an economic power is World War II, where we're going to see how a production and massive production is going to have the federal government be invested in massive production, which is going to put people to work and going to make the United States, going to bring it to kind of an economic position it hadn't ever had in the world before. And you'll get to find out the end of the story of the drain pipe.